Hello, I'm Maria Ressa. Welcome to Rappler Talk. The Philippines has about 200,000 kilometers of roads, a length that's supposed to reach halfway to the moon, but only a little of over a quarter is paved. This coming 2016, the government's expected to put out nearly 3 billion pesos, or about $6 billion US of the national budget for infrastructure, about 3 times the budget that it had in 2011. Is that enough? What needs to be done? Joining us today is World Bank senior economist Kai Kaiser to talk about improving the Philippine road networks. Join the discussion by using hashtag OpenRoads. Good afternoon, Kai. Welcome to Rappler.
Good to be here.
From Jakarta to Manila, Kai was in Jakarta at about the same time I think we were. We overlapped a little bit in
We did,
Jakarta.
yes.
So let's talk here. I mean, both Indonesia and the Philippines have infrastructure problems, infrastructure woes, infrastructure. Roads. Why roads of all the different infrastructure problems?
Well, roads connect. Roads are network infrastructure. You can't get to schools, you can't get to industry, you can't get to jobs without roads. So roads really matter. Roads connect.
Yeah.
Roads connect in different ways. So even though you might be building a road, say, for the purpose of tourism, or you might be building a road to promote industry, they work in very different ways. So they matter to people in multiple ways. They're also different from, say, point infrastructure because they connect. Roads don't exist in a vacuum or a single point. They make up the connectivity of a country and linked with other links, airline connections, plane connection, shipping connections. They bring nations together. We're in an archipelago. The Philippines is an archipelago. So is Indonesia, actually. But roads still matter in terms of bringing the country together.
Right.
We also looked at roads because roads span roles and responsibilities across governments that are highly decentralized. Where in the Philippines, we have about 1,600 city and municipal governments, over 80 provinces, and many even lower levels of government, which certainly on paper have responsibility for maintaining roads that are the last mile access. So in the Philippines, the national government in principle, or the Department of Public Works and Highways, is responsible for the core network, the 15% of the national road network, the 30,000 kilometers of the national highways. It's really been focused on making sure that that core network is being paved. And that's been a big focus also of this administration, to get to that point that the national road network, the core network, is up to standards of pavement. But even when you have the national road network, to get to those last mile destinations, to connect the communities, to get to the schools, local roads matter.
Right.
And there we're actually seeing that the national government has also taken a very proactive role in improving local roads. So these are the 85% of the remaining roads that exist in various states of largely unpaved, but even when they're paved, they're in poor condition, concreted, are not connecting up. And so what we see is the national government is spending very significant amounts of money to provide local government support to build them, but also is actually building a large part of these roads on behalf of national government. And so understanding how these roads are coming together, both through local financing and national financing, we really felt was a most tangible way of getting at the infrastructure challenge.
And in terms of how we fare compared to the rest of the countries in Southeast Asia, what's the state of, how do we compare?
Actually, if you take, there are different measures, of course. You can take percentage of paved, but we actually do fairly badly. And maybe getting beyond sort of World Bank statistics of percent road paved, it matters also how we're perceived abroad. For example, tourists. So for us, an entry point for roads was tourism, as it was for the government, because what leaves an impression more than having a bad trip? You can have the best arrival at the airport, the most friendly smiles at the airport, the most friendly reception at customs and ever. But if your trip, those last couple of hours to get you to the last mile, are in bad condition, your impression is going to be fairly negative. And I think that's also been a recognition for improving the road network on the part of government. So a very large program has been actually to improve connectivity for tourism. But it's because it's so important to both for the perceptions of the country, but also so important for if you feel, look, it's going to be difficult to get to this place in the Philippines, and it's just hard to visit two places, even if they're the most beautiful combination of coastal destination and landscape destination, because the roads are just not there.
Right.
You may be detracted from that. So I think it's both the statistics where we do badly, but also how both folks that are visiting, folks that are coming from Manila,
right,
or folks across the country perceive the roads and have the expectations.
So before we go into
Yeah.
the people who live in remote areas and connecting everyone together, traffic, this is what everyone in Metro Manila is concerned about. I mean, is this something that has been factored into the road networks? Have you seen this change? Is there planning that has brought that in?
Yeah, we have, I think the recent statistics of ways that we have some of the worst traffic
Correct.
I was thinking we're global champions actually,
Right.
in some ways.
Oh, that's bad.
No, look, it manifests itself in different ways. Even if you look at local road networks, what we're actually seeing is that a lot of the roads, even in local places that are quite busy, are going through the middle of town. So of course you're going to get major congestion that has both to do with the quality of the roads, with the width of the roads, but also how the roads are being structured. You go to a lot of our places across the Philippines, very limited bypass roads. Planning of, so most of the mainstream traffic that's going through is actually going through the local towns. That's one form of road planning. So in addition to just improving the quality of roads so that movement is there, planning, I think the widths, the clearing up of the roads, those working through and understanding where are the choke points at a local level is really matters. And I think if you look at any locality, be it a municipality, the picture will look very different. And I think what we're trying to do by injecting more information about what networks currently exist and where are the choke points, communities can then have a discussion, because it's really it's different worlds even at the local level.
Yes.
At the one hand, you might be thinking about a farmer who needs to spend a significant part of his energy to be able to try to even get goods to the market. That's one end of it.
Right.
But on the other end, you might just have transport operators or tourists that are stuck in the jam of the local community city. So having those conversations come together and localities better prioritize how the network is coming together, I think is one of the areas where we're really trying to achieve a better local conversation, because these problems are ultimately solved at the front line, at the local level.
Before we go to the action points of what we can do right now, let's go backwards in time. How did we get to the state of where we are now? What problems need to be avoided?
Well, the problems that need to be avoided are, we'd say, open participation in the way that roads are prioritized.
Okay.
Roads get prioritized through a number of lenses. I'm an economist, so I always look at it from the perspective of economic or social returns. They require expertise from transport specialists, from engineers, from
Right.
planners that do this. But roads are also ultimately a political process. They're very tangible. They matter. We cannot take the politics out of road prioritization, particularly when we live in constrained financing environments. It is a political process. Leaders will decide which road gets built this year and which road will have to wait, or which ones. I think some of the areas where we're picking up problems is, do these three perspectives come together?
Right.
Do the economics come together? Does the transport engineering come together? And does the political process come together? Where it fails, or where we often see it fail, is that decisions are either short-term, so we get fragmented roads. We don't get networks.
Right.
We get fragmented sections, because it's basically about handing out roads more on the basis of what trade-off do you have to have this year, as opposed to a conversation that's more medium-term and saying, okay, if we're going to connect these communities,
Right.
what needs to happen and how can we invest? If we're going to address these choke points, including at times of natural disaster, how do we invest? And that's a conversation where the planning and that participation needs to take place. Different societies have found different ways to optimize that. That's one area I think where in the Philippines be it for lack of information, but also the nature of our political process.
Correct.
We've fallen short.
Can you explain more about this? What does that mean?
Well, I think just how investments are prioritized, again, can be subject to political capture. I don't think this is anything new to anybody in the Philippines.
Yep.
So the road is built not because it's the most important one for the community, but because it is part of a political process. I mean, we've heard of roads to my farm.
Right.
So those are very explicit forms of capture of the roads.
Vested interests of politicians, right?
Capture the roads. It's not the communities that most need or the numbers that really deserve the roads where they most benefit the most beneficiaries, but it's a set of vested interests that are able to capture the roads.
Have you seen that decrease or increase?
I think there's a real effort going on in the Philippines, in part because of the recognition that we need to improve our network. I think national government has done a great deal to try to improve and work these programs. But you know, when you're talking about tens of thousands of projects all across the country, the national government, for example, is currently financing, I think on the order in the last couple of years, of 10,000 different projects all across the Philippines. You cannot monitor that without the help of the frontline communities. All eyes need to be on roads to see whether these projects are in the right place. Are they being built at the right time? Are they being built to the right specifications?
Yeah.
And are they being completed? Are they connecting up? So I think that's where we're really reaching out, even to groups like Rappler and others like yourselves, to sort of bring in some of that community voice and that feedback. So I think we feel strongly that actually bringing more transparency to how roads are being provided and really tapping into different forms of feedback from farmers who may have very low expectations about road, and working with them to try to bring them to understand that this is what you can expect. This is what you can expect from your government, and providing feedback to even the more sophisticated groups that have gone on their travels to Paris or Japan and kind of are expecting very, very good networks. So it's a range of feedback that we expect from different groups. The other part, of course, where I think we could make a big difference in the Philippines is, are the roads that are being prioritized, are they being adequately completed?
Yes.
Are contractors doing their jobs? It's a simple one. If you have a contract that says you will generate a road from this point to that point at that quality, getting community feedback really can help. Yes, engineering supervision and others is clearly important, but with that number of projects, even the engineers can't do the job on their own. So they need the help of the people to monitor that. And I think that's where we're trying to go with a lot of these initiatives.
So that is actually the core of #OpenRoads, which Rappler is partnering with the World Bank on, right? I mean, this is one of the things we want to try to do, is to get our civic engagement, increase civic engagement, to give that kind of feedback. When people are listening in on this, how can they do it? What do you want from them? You talked about two things: the roads, whether they're being built, and the roads that they need, right? Can you tell us more about that?
Well, the first thing is be more aware of your road network. In Manila, I joke, we spend a lot of time on EDSA, right?
Yes.
So it's in those moments you can ignore it, you can filter it out, but I spend time kind of trying to just look at the roads around me and trying to understand, why is it being blocked? Why? So having a bit more awareness to be part of.
Instead of just complaining.
Instead of just complaining,
right.
But having an awareness. So basically saying, look, I recognize when I come, there's a particular part in the road, there's always a choke point. Now, information systems like Waze can help a lot because it makes them very clear. But if you're either traveling to a far-flung place in the Philippines, or are even in a medium-sized city, or are actually working with agricultural rural communities, become more aware of the network. I think that's one thing of understanding, well, where are the real problems of the network? Where are you actually seeing particularly the poor suffer most from poor network connectivity? So awareness, I think, is one thing. The other is be aware of the investments that are already taking place. Government is doing a lot.
Right.
So we used there are a lot of lists out there of projects that are ongoing, either financed by the national government or financed by local governments. I think what we've tried to do, and it's a beginning through Open Roads, is to bring that together, right? So, I started looking at these things, and if somebody hands me a long spreadsheet list with 63 projects, that's not real to me. It's difficult. I need a map. I'm quite a visual person. So what we tried to do is actually, the first thing is bring road projects together on a map. So understand, first of all, what is the national road? Be aware, is this a national road, or is this a road where the governor or the mayor should be, at first instance, held accountable? So that's one starting point of awareness. The second part of awareness is understand which projects are actually in your community, which are ongoing. What farm to market road is benefiting your community? The Philippines Rural Development Project, which is a project that the World Bank has been supporting also across the day. Where is there a project like that that's benefiting my community? Where is there a tourism road infrastructure program? There's a bottom-up budgeting process which has been very active and increasing in the Philippines. Where is that project? I can list a number of other road projects, but at least try to understand how those projects are already benefiting your community, right? And then ask the question, first of all, are you happy with the way these projects are being done?
Yep.
Provide constructive feedback. We'd actually start by saying, yes, you appreciate that this road is going into the place. That's a good point to start. But then become aware of, are the projects getting done? Are they getting time? What does the billboard say? When was this project supposed to be completed? And if more people begin asking, well, why did it not complete it? There may be very good reasons, but that's another part of the conversation. Once that conversation has advanced and you understand what is the network, I think then you can also begin having a very concrete, a better conversation locally about where are there missing gaps. I think what we often see is that when monies are not enough, roads will connect a part of it.
Right.
But there are incredibly valuable links which could be completed to make those network links to bring two different communities together, or two different networks, or two different parts of the thing. So understand the road network from that perspective, and then work with channeling your voice and saying, this is a high return link in the road network that should be improved.
Okay.
One of the ideas that we picked up, if you spend some time in the US, you'll sometimes see along the highway, adopt a highway, which are chambers of commerce and others, which basically adopt the highway, but they mean to keep it clean, right? You could do a similar thing in your community where chambers of commerce or others adopt highways that may be unpaved or maybe not, and sort of adopt them and work with authorities to try to improve them. So different ways, and I think the key point that we would say is information, mapping, but also a lot of the mobile technology. Mobile technology is so powerful today, so powerful and so cheap. Be it road videos, be it images of roads, incredibly powerful. If harnessed appropriately, I think they can do a great job of assisting government and helping government realize the investments. I think in government there are a lot of folks that really want to both scale up investments but make investments better. And I think by linking through to feedback, that change can begin happening. It's not going to be perfect. Some areas are going to do a lot better than others. And we've seen that even at the local level. But beginning to make that step, I think, is going to be quite a powerful way in terms of changing the way that our archipelagos, the infrastructure works in the Philippines.
Great. So some questions are coming in from Twitter, but before we zoom in onto what else we can do, can you just assess is this enough? It has enough of we talked earlier when we began about how much there's 3 times what it was in 2011. Is that enough money? Is that enough money to be put in to invest in roads?
I jokingly, I was telling you, I just came back from China, right? And China is the sort of, has been investing at astounding levels as a level of GDP. I mean, the levels are a third to a fourth of just going into infrastructure. I joke, I come back to the Philippines. Until recently, we were spending about 2.5 pesos out of every 100 pesos of GDP of economic activity on public infrastructure. Okay. World Bank guidance or others suggest that for a country, a country like the Philippines that's trying to get to middle income status, it really should be spending a minimum of 5%. So 5 pesos of our economic activity on generating public infrastructure. So that's 1 out of 20 pesos of every infrastructure. Now the government has set that goal for 2016 to really get to 5%. That's doubling what they're doing in terms of public infrastructure. I think there the Philippines has really the needle is moving in the right direction.
But we won't feel that for many years after, correct? After 2016, because then you have to build the roads. This is where we have to be vigilant as citizens. Is that correct? When do we
That's
feel
right.
this?
No, I think we're, in some cases we're already beginning to feel that.
Okay.
I think we're seeing that a number of projects that get completed well are having a big difference. Just to give you an example, I mean, one of the road programs that we've been tracking as part of this Open Roads and sort of the early engagement with government has been the Tourism Road Infrastructure Program. That program has been targeting about 450 strategic road projects across at a total length of 4,000 kilometers.
Okay.
There are a number of tourism destinations where 2 years ago, transport operators couldn't get to because they weren't all-weather roads and they wouldn't risk bringing tourists there. So that's one tangible that's one tangible example where I think even projects that are completed within 2 to 3 years make a big difference, and those are already showing their benefits for certain destinations. On the other side of it, there are a number of farm-to-market roads, local access roads, which are having a very tangible benefits in addition to the very large projects, whether they're through the regular budget or through private-public partnerships. I know we complain a lot in Manila about the traffic, including through construction, but I think you're already seeing a number of these projects open up and open some of these choke points. Will they have an impact overnight? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
But I think we are beginning to sort of see that this infrastructure can pay off. But as you noted, there are two things that we need to look out for is, are these roads getting done, and are they really connecting up? And I think that's where people can make a difference. A figure of 5% of GDP could be spent very well. It could also be spent very poorly. So
Correct.
It's really kind of trying to understand.
Well, on that then, some questions from Twitter. The cost of roads. This is from @Raymond Dulana. How we watch the budget of road projects, the money matters. Is it overpriced? The cost of roads. I mean, we see oftentimes roads getting redone every year, and Raymond is I think alluding to corruption. Is this the right one? The price of roads. Do you take a look at that?
Absolutely. We'll give you an example. We've been working with the Commission on Audit in the Philippines. Has had a very innovative program, which they call the Citizens Participatory Audit Program, where they've actually been bringing in citizens to be part of audits, performance audits. So they did a number of them for where the bank also and other partners have engaged. Other development partners have engaged, for example, on reconstruction. So the Australian government was supportive in that. The bank has engaged on that. What we've done with the Commission on Audit has been an effort over the last few months is to do participatory audits all across the country for farm-to-market roads. This is in a number of regions.
Great.
And I think the exciting side of that is it's taken both the auditors, citizens, and engineers and brought them together using geotagging tools and others to go out and learn about not only how to geotag roads, but what were the roads supposed to cost, what were the specifications, what were they do, and provide feedback as you would in an audit about were these roads built at the right price and the right cost. Now, this is not to say that, again, having engineering skills and professional skills are an important part of that judgment. But I think if you are aware, I think that example of citizens participatory audit along with information, and along as the information that is on billboards, can tell you quite a bit about what the expectations should be in terms of roads. There are a set of general unit costs that you can expect. For example, a national road to a certain standard will cost 20 to 25 million pesos per kilometer for a rebuild, right? So just by being aware of what are the kind of standards of roads, 6 meters to concrete and others are being done, you can even get a ballpark sense of what should be appropriate. But just the sense that people are looking at this, that people care, that people are looking at whether contractors are completing the roads, I think is an incredibly powerful way of beginning to rein in some of those challenges and issues that you have.
How much of the budget for roads has been lost to corruption, leakage?
That's a really tough one. The nature of corruption is that it's illicit, right?
hard,
So it's
right,
always hard
correct,
estimate.
correct.
So I can give you, there are a number of estimates that are done through various mechanisms that estimate how much is lost or how inefficient roads are. There was recently a larger report that was done across all countries in the world, looking at the quality of public investment management across different countries.
Right.
And those figures, if they're to be believed and they're indicative, are quite astounding. I mean, they're basically saying that the level of how you convert a peso of investment to an actual asset, an actual project, that we're seeing leakages 30%, 40% in other states. Now, this is not sort of proven, but you have to put together the information.
Right.
But I think it's just to say that getting investment right or getting it better has amazing returns if those kind of numbers are to be believed. So one of it is obviously corruption and can it be done more efficiently, but just the benefit of making sure that the road gets built in the right place has an amazing return. So I think it's important to think about corruption and leakages, but just look at the kinds of processes that are prioritizing. And sometimes it's not only corruption that identifies it, although corruption is clearly an important and very corrosive issue.
Well,
in
I guess
public
it connects to the politics that you talked about, right? So the three things you said: when politics are involved, vested interest, and then I'm assuming corruption to a degree. But please.
That's right. I mean, how do we judge a road that didn't get built at all due to corruption versus a really nicely built road that just doesn't benefit very many people?
Doesn't go anywhere, right?
That doesn't go anywhere.
The road to nowhere.
I think we have. I think even if you were out in your own communities, you could probably give some live examples of different things. So I'd actually encourage. Those who are out there actually across the country to nominate what they think are examples of successful roads.
Yes.
But I'd actually encourage them to. Do you think that there are examples out there of roads to nowhere, of examples of roads that you felt, at least from what they were promised, didn't quite meet their target? So
and the last history point is going back in the administrations that we've had in the Philippines. I mean, it took a lot of time to make us the second worst country in terms of paved roads, right? Which administration did the best and the worst in terms of road infrastructure? Do you know anything?
I think that's a hard judgment to make. And I'll tell you one reason why it's a hard judgment to make. Also because we lack a lot of the information.
Correct. Okay. That makes
if
sense.
you asked me today, which government increased most for paved roads and others, I think now, certainly on the national road network, DPWH has put together a good information system.
Yep.
So year on year, they can report. And I think this administration, by even putting some of those indicators in the budget, I'd encourage, budgets are not the most exciting documents to read, but I'd actually encourage folks to actually look at some of the reforms in the budget process over the past couple of years, because for the first time you're actually seeing performance indicators in the budget saying so many kilometers of road should be improved than that. I think that's an important set of progress in advance. So the first thing is we need information to actually be able to make that judgment. So then
information.
And while we're doing a lot better on information on the national road network, the state of mapping of the local road network leaves a lot to be desired. So if you ask me today, we estimate, we have the thing that our current road network, stretched out is somewhere halfway to the moon, if you want to imagine that.
Oh my God.
But we have actually we don't have a lot of good information. So if you go out on your mobile phone and you draw on public information such as OpenStreetMaps or even Google Maps or others, you'll find that the mapping is quite good, say in Metro Manila or other areas, and is actually improving in a lot of the medium-scale cities. But in a lot of the places, particularly in the rural areas where connectivity matters, mapping is actually in quite a poor state. So the maps may exist, but they're not being shared in a place where people can access. If I were to ask the question, it's a tough one, which road is the responsibility of a province, a governor, or a mayor? Don't even make the difference whether it's a barangay captain or the other, but just that difference. That information is not readily available to most people. So if I'm on a road and I see an issue, I don't actually know are you going to call the province or are you going to call the city municipality to do that? So that baseline information, I think, is very, very important. And government is doing, for example, beginning to roll out a better system to keep track of provincial roads. But that's going to take a couple of years, right? So
Yeah.
in the interim, a lot of often the energy that can be used through crowdsourcing and others can make a big difference. So you can see municipalities or communities very rapidly putting together roadmaps that can then be shared and have information. To keep up the analogy of the halfway to the moon, mapping roads these days is not rocket science.
Yeah, exactly.
I think what we can see is very quickly you can have even people with a mobile device.
Correct.
It's not engineering grade,
Right.
but they can map the road and say this is a provincial road and this is an area where I'd like to improve that road. Or at least I'd like to be able to tell my leaders this is an important
Correct.
road. So communities like OpenStreetMapping,
Right.
for example, which
Right.
I like to call the Wikipedia of maps, are a good start. But what we're trying to do through initiatives like Open Roads and working with government is to add that extra information that can then make that communication with government so much more effective. So it's important to map a road, whether it's primary or secondary, but it's also important to understand whether that road is a national or subnational road, because when you're communicating and saying these projects need to be improved, that information matters a great deal.
Right,
So
right.
what we've tried to do in Open Roads is just try to find those information points that may have the most impact. They may not be the most complicated or
Right.
sophisticated, but that they sort of matter as mapping. So information matters a great deal. Once you have information, that's when you can also promote, positive performance, and that's when you can start communicating results. So I think administrations are doing a better job at tracking results. I think there's been a lot of progress made. Obviously, in such a complex setting, there's always a lot of unfinished business.
Right.
But we're really hoping that this type of mapping can actually begin measuring that progress and showing that progress.
Well, we'll talk a little bit more about that, but let me throw a few questions from social media for you. This is from Facebook, from Thomas Stickney. Oh, Tom Twitter. It's from Twitter. Hi, Tom. In your experience, what do you find most frustrating about the current Philippine road system? My God, Tom, you stumped him. Or he's thinking about what to say, what he could say.
As I said, I spend a lot of time in Manila. I go from meetings to meetings. I spend a lot of time in the car and traffic. So that's what's most immediate to my day-to-day reality. But it's not, I experience it as a discomfort, but it's not something that I would say stunts my livelihood in that way. So I'm lucky in that way. So while we may complain, and we even in Metro Manila know that congestion and lack of has main issues, I think what I find often quite difficult is particularly spending a fair bit of time in the field and just seeing situations where frontline communities, whether they're in the agricultural sector, whether they're in the tourism sector, whether they're access to clinics or health or schools, where the road connections are just very, very bad. And you ask yourself, why did this not get resolved earlier? I think that's one frustration that I often find, because I see the resources are available. Why are these connections not being made for those communities? I think for those, that would be one frustration of saying, if these needs are so obvious, what is a better way of being more responsive and responding to them? I think for the first time in a long time, the Philippines is in a position where where growth is good, and the fiscal space, what we call public finance, the public resource are actually available to do those projects. So money is no longer the main constraint. It's getting the roads to the right place. It's getting the infrastructure to the right place. I think that's one frustration.
Right.
I think the other frustration would be that even in the cases where projects are made, those projects don't do the job of connecting. I often find myself taking a detour from a national road, finding that a road is in terrible state for 3 or 4 kilometers, then seeing suddenly a road that's been paved for 2 kilometers, and then the access point in the last part of it not. That penalizes the whole first of all of the communities along
Right,
the way, because
right.
you still have to get through that first. So the lack of that network connectivity is another frustrating part. The final, I think, frustrating part is when roads are not well maintained, or
Right.
when roads that should last a number of years don't last a number of years. And that has both to do with build quality and the kind of supervision that was done and the feedback that was provided when the road was built, but also just very simple things like that the local governments of the local communities make sure that roads are maintained. The damage that overburden or not keeping the road clean or having particular types of transport or others run over these roads is very, very high.
Yeah.
And so this, build and rebuild cycle, I think, is incredibly damaging, and can leave communities that even got a road for a few years, worse off when
Yeah.
where they started. So.
Several comments from Twitter now. I love this name, Umberto Rocco. NLEX S-Lex connector presented 2010, only approved for Swiss challenge this year, hardly adequate. And then his hashtag is hashtag ekonomiya naman, hashtag phileconomy. Another comment from, let me give you a question from @SteelSheen. I wish there's a main highway that would connect the tip of Luzon to the tip of Mindanao, like the US have their interstates.
Well, if you go on to Rappler, I would actually suggest that you do, because there is
There is one.
there is the highway.
Right, exactly.
I thought, like, the one thing that I'd actually like to do is to travel those. I think it's 13,000 kilometers. Right? Go on Rappler, because you'll actually know. And there's actually a fascinating conversation on Rappler going on about both the history and the extent of that road network. So there is the Pan-Philippine Highway.
Yeah.
I've actually traveled good
Yeah.
parts of it.
Nice.
Some parts of it are quite impressive. Other parts, I think we
He says with a smile.
they sort of need improvement. But I think, yes, there is a Pan-Philippine Highway. I think what we have to note, unlike the U.S., I think a number of us has done road trips in the U.S. from one side to the other. The Philippines is an archipelago, which means that even our national highway has connector points, including roll-on, roll-off ferries. So our national highway is as much a national highway as it is a seaway.
Right.
But it is mapped, it was built, and I think the discussion in Rappler is actually quite interesting, because it tells us a lot about the history of how that road network initially was evolved, how it is evolving. And I also find it kind of interesting looking at the debates there that I've seen about who do people associate, who do people both credit,
Right.
and who do people, how do you say, blame for the parts of that road which are not, which are both good and which are in need of additional improvements.
Actually, that was surprising. So if you're interested in this, take a look at Rappler's Facebook page. That conversation is still ongoing, and we can push it out now on Twitter for you. What was interesting about that is that people started posting their own photos of what it was, right? I didn't realize roads had a visceral, people were engaged in that one. They shared it, and then they had their own inputs directly into it. That means there's room for civic engagement in this. So to close this, I guess, is the question of what do you want them to do? So there, you have to help us with our roads. What to do?
Well, I think a few things. One is become aware and appreciate the value of information.
Right.
So a few things I think that you can do is don't just complain, but hold your government to account. Set expectations about what you expect from your government, first of all, in terms of information. I think we've been working together with government, but also a number of other partners, to try to make information more accessible.
Right.
Not just by particular road programs, but also across bringing it together. So I'd actually encourage you to ask the question in your given municipality or in your given province, how much information is actually available on the projects? Can you have a conversation that actually says, well, how many roads are actually being done at the moment in my province in a given year, and which ones are the ones that are most important to me? That information, I think, is quite useful because it can help you engage. So having citizens demand information and provide the basic supply of information It's the law that each infrastructure project should have a well-specified, updated billboard. Are those billboards there? Do you know where those roads are? I think those kinds of movements to say, look, people actually care about the information that's out there. People expect that level of information and that transparency from their leaders, I think is one important starting point. The other thing is, as people are already doing, is show that roads matter. Roads are not something that is there for a politician's ribbon-cutting ceremony. Roads are things that matter to people's daily lives. So post both the positive, but also where you see others. So again, technologies, the geotagging technology, which just means basically knowing the spot of where a picture is taken, or knowing the picture a video is taken, or is incredibly powerful. We can sit here today, Maria, and within a few minutes we can see a mushrooming of pictures all across the Philippines that can tell us about not just where people care about certain road segments, but they can report that. Now, how that information is harnessed, I think that's the next phase. We cannot expect that simply posting pictures of where improvements need to happen or where there are issues will change things overnight. But it certainly is a starting point. So also setting realistic expectations about what you can expect from your government or from your leaders. So having a constructive conversation at the provincial or at the local level with national government about how can networks be improved. I think if we can do those three things to basically say, set your expectations about the information. What do you expect from your government about not just saying, where is the road, but what are the projects that are ongoing? Show me the picture, show me the map. Provide constructive feedback, and then begin engaging in a positive conversation about how you can improve. I think will, within both immediately but also over time, mean that your networks in the communities will be both better for you, but really all of those citizens around you. And when you've started the conversation about roads, you can simultaneously, I think, begin having a conversation about the other types of hard and soft infrastructure that matter around those roads. Anything from, are the schools there? Are the clinics there? Is the environmental protection there? This is one big issue that we're finding in tourism. If you open up important destinations and others, are they also being kept? Are they maintaining their value? And I think that's where communities can also play an important role in terms of saying, our places are special. So take pictures of beautiful places along the road, because those are also pictures that will attract others and that will matter.
Fantastic. One comment and a last question, and these are both from Twitter, from @PhilippineBeat. Hello, Jane. Citizens can use apps, open street mapping to help out. You talked about this. Maybe we need to map quality of roads as well, her suggestion. Are you doing that now?
Yeah.
Yes,
so
paved and unpaved, right?
Yeah, so we are monitoring paved, unpaved,
Yeah.
also some measures of quality. And I just, one observation, you know, a lot of my engineering friends spend a lot of time thinking about the quality of roads and others. And there are obviously very sophisticated ways, including roughness, of measuring roads. But what we actually find is that simply getting folks to take a video and say which part of that road is paved, how wide is it, what quality is it, is an important, powerful starting point. So again, a farmer or a tourist will experience a road by its travel destination. May not be fully aware of the engineering details or others, but it's a very, very good start. So yes, absolutely. So what we're doing through Open Roads is actually beginning to what we call using videos or images to geo-process periodically every few months to understand, is a segment paved or not.
How do they find this? Where do they find it?
Well, we'd encourage you to go on to OpenRoadsgov.ph, which provides some of the information and the information that's currently available. You can, of course, find it through the different Twitter feeds and Rapplers. And we'd actually encourage you, in some cases, you can actually watch virtual videos of roads. There are a number there. Departments are increasingly doing it. But you can go to that site and actually, for the roads where the information has been provided, you can actually take a virtual trip. So click on a road in a particular province, and in some cases you will find a video that will allow you to visit that road at different parts in time.
Fantastic.
And we hope that that's actually going to increase a lot over time.
So this is the last comment and question, or question and comment and question, I guess, and you want to hear what you think about it. Raymond Dulana on Twitter says, why are there so many unpaved roads? And he provides an answer. It's corruption and politics. Some congressmen are prioritizing areas with more voters. Hashtag open roads. Your reaction?
Well, actually, sometimes I think targeting roads at places where there are a lot more voters is not a bad thing, right?
Yes.
If you're actually benefiting a large number of people through the building of the road, that's a good thing. And voters actually have to come forward and say, as larger groups, give the roads that matter,
right,
but also work with, if there are marginalized groups, and now politics are of course complicated, they are very complicated. We are in an election year in the Philippines. So nobody, of course, will, or are coming into an election year, nobody will deny the salience of politics, both for good and bad.
Yep.
But I think what we're arguing is, yes, if the majority or if large groups of engaged citizens can engage, can let their leaders know that roads that benefit more people are important to them, and that roads that get done well, that's a good thing. The roads that I worry about most are the roads that simply fail to materialize in places where there are large gaps,
right,
or the roads that benefit very, very few people, or the roads that benefit perhaps those that are not in the poorest segments or the bottom 40% of our population. I think there's always a conversation about where are roads most efficient. Do you build them in urban areas with large economic, or do you try to make sure that every community or every farmer or every suitable crop area has adequate access? These are important conversations, and again, I go back to them. They are conversations that need to take place at the local level. They are conversations that need to bring in transport expertise.
Right.
They need to bring in, again speaking, they need to bring in economic expertise. But ultimately, all the technical expertise will not have real impact on getting benefits if it's not the people and their leaders that actually make sure that the right roads are benefiting the people. So yes, please, let's build more roads that actually benefit more people, and that, I think, will also begin showing progress for areas such as economic activity and sustain the kind of growth that we've been beginning to see in the Philippines, along with a host of the number of reforms that we're also seeing.
Fantastic. So our Twitter account can send you the link to that, and stay tuned. We're going to be putting a lot more of these things on Rappler. We're joining the hashtag Open Roads. Your last thoughts?
Well, I'm really looking forward to actually hearing from everybody out there about how they perceive the roads, and also your suggestions in terms of what can we actually do in the Philippines to improve road networks. What can we do to sustain some of the initial gains that have been made, that have been improved? So actually looking forward to hearing from the community out there about the kinds of positive and real steps that can be taken, both to make roads matter, but to really have these roads, bring us to more prosperity across the Philippines.
Yeah, it is incredible. The road to school, the road to jobs. It's really the roads to future, right? Moving forward. Thank you for joining us. We've been speaking with World Bank senior economist Kai Kaiser to talk about improving infrastructure in the Philippines. Hashtag Open Roads. Stay tuned. We're going to continue this conversation. You got to join us. Let's help build the roads bottom up. I'm Maria Ressa. Thank you for watching.